اور اس کا ترجمہ انشاءاللہ. اعوذ باللہ. اور اس میں جو آخری آیت ہے وہ 12ویں امام کی پیشین گوئی کی طرف اشارہ ہے فرمان علی صاحب کے قرآن کے ترجمے کے مطابق. اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان اللعین الرجیم. وقالت اليہود عزیز ابن اللہ وقالت النصارى المسیح ابن اللہ ذالک قولهم بافواہہم یضاہئون قول الذین کفروا من قبل قاتلهم اللہ انا یؤفکون. اتخذوا احبارهم ورهبانهم اربابا من دون اللہ والمسیح ابن مریم وما امروا الا لیعبدوا الہا واحدا لا الہ الا هو سبحانہ عما یشرکون. یریدون ان یطفئوا نور اللہ بافواہہم ویابی اللہ الا ان یتم نورہ ولو کرہ الکافرون. صدق اللہ العلی العظیم. یہود تو کہتے ہیں کہ عزیز خدا کے بیٹے ہیں، اور نصارہ کہتے ہیں مسیح خدا کے بیٹے. یہ تو ان کی بات ہے، اور وہ خود انہی کے منہ سے یہ لوگ بھی انہی کافروں کی سی باتیں بنانے لگے جو ان سے پہلے گزر چکے ہیں. خدا ان کو قتل کرے، کہاں سے کہاں بھٹک رہے ہیں. ان لوگوں نے تو اپنے خدا کو چھوڑ کر اپنے عالموں اور اپنے زاہدوں کو اور مریم کے بیٹے مسیح کو اپنا پروردگار بنا ڈالا، حالانکہ انہیں سوائے اس کے اور حکم ہی نہیں دیا گیا تھا کہ خدا یکتا کی عبادت کریں. اس کے سوا اور کوئی قابل پرستش نہیں. جس چیز کو یہ لوگ اس کا شریک بناتے ہیں اور اس سے پاک و پاکیزہ ہے. یہ لوگ چاہتے ہیں کہ اپنے منہ سے پھونک مار کر خدا کے نور کو بجھا دیں، اور خدا اس کے سوا کچھ مانتا ہی نہیں کہ اپنے نور کو پورا ہی کر رہے گا، اگرچہ کہ کفار برا مانا کریں. صدق اللہ العلی العظیم. اور اس کا انگریزی میں ہے ترجمہ. اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم. The Jews says Uzair is the son of Allah, and the Christians say the Messiah is the son of Allah. Such are their sayings by which they imitate those who disbelieved of old. May Allah assail them. How perverse they are. They have made their rabbis and their monks and the Messiah of the son of Mary as lords besides Allah, though they were only ordered to worship one God. There is no God but Him. Transcendent is He above what they associate with Him. They desire to extinguish the light of Allah with their mouths, and Allah refuses but to perfect His light, though the disbelievers detest it. صدق اللہ العلی العظیم. لائٹ آف اللہ کا اشارہ امام مہدی علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام عجل اللہ تعالیٰ فرج کے طرف اشارہ ہے. صدق اللہ العلی العظیم.
اللہم صلی علی Jazakallah Mu'mineen, everyone, for joining. Request for Surah Fatiha in recitation of 3 times Surah Ikhlas for Sayyid Razi, compiler of Nahjul Balagha, Sheikh Abbas Khummi, compiler of Mafatihul Jinnah, Agha Ayatollah Khomeini, Shaheed Qasim Sulaiman, Allama Rashid Turabi, and Maulana Sayyid Akhtar Zahdi. And all marhumin, especially who do not have anyone to read Surah Fatiha for them. Jazakallah.
And also, Assalamu alaikum, and also for marhum Askari Jafri. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Rahman Malik Yawmiddin. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم لم يلد ولم يولد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Dear Mu'mineen, Mu'minat, after the speech of Maulana, we are having a very, very important topic affecting all of us, young and old, and the coming generation, to how to convey to them in a proper way and in an intellectual way, so they come and join our sessions. So this is very important, and your question answers are also as important as the sessions. Jazakallah. Please stay for the full session. Nare Salawat. Allahumma salli ala
Muhammad.
May now please request Dr. Shaeba to begin his speech.
Jazakallah. Yunus Bhai, can you also enable participant screen sharing? Jazakallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغه مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفتن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود فترى الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته ووطد بالصخور ميادان أرضه أفضل الدين معرفته ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خير المبشرين والمنذرين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا صلى على محمد وآل محمد. Dearest Mu'mineen, Mu'minat, my elders, my youngers, viewers, listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Inshallah, today we will continue with our discussion on Nahjul Balagha. We are still in Sermon 1, and we seem to be reaching towards the end. This is the second last section, so after this there is one section left. We will try to dedicate today's discussion to this section and complete it to the extent possible within the time that we have. We are looking at what we have divided into as section 6, and this is regarding the Holy Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. Last section we had been talking about the greatest messenger, the holiest and the most beloved of Allah, the first Nur, the first light of creation, the messenger who was present first before anyone else, yet was the last one to come amongst us. Oftentimes that question is asked, why is it that the greatest one is coming at the end? The one who is so distinct from the other 123,999, as the famous number goes, the one that is so distinct from them that they had to bear witness to his prophethood, to his messengership, in order for them to be given the station of prophethood. So they were not allowed to be stationed at this status until they accepted and said, Ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. It was not enough for the prophets to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. So therefore, we see that when a prophet is not being given prophethood until they accept the messengership of the last one, how is it possible that anyone's faith or iman in this world can be complete until they accept the messengership of the last one? Sometimes they say, well, they accepted everybody else, but they did not accept the last one. It is important to accept the last one because everyone else's message was based on the last one. If we are not accepting him, then we are not accepting the complete message of the previous prophets. So therefore, to accept the entirety, and that means that we accept everything that is in there. It's like when we click on the box that is an end user license agreement for some software that we are downloading, and the whole software is a very long list. We don't even read all of it. But when we click the checkbox, that is telling us we have accepted everything. So accepting the 124,000 prophets, the 12 Aimma, this is complete faith and iman. And they say that, well, what if he was the greatest, why was he sent last? Why was he not sent in the beginning? Well, what happens is every one message that is coming for a certain group of people in a certain time period. But the last one is coming from the beginning to the end for every group, for every time period. So therefore, their universality requires that the public, that the people in population at that time, they need to have that level of universality so that the universal messenger can come. And this means that they have to have a level of technology where now what is being spread as a message will be stored and will be continued. That means that there was a time period in technology in regards to our scribing, writing, reading level of education, where the Quran could now be implemented in a way that it would be preserved, and it could be preserved with evidence that it was not changed, for example, it was not altered. We do not have different versions of it. We only have one version. And this required, the certain level of technology. So the messengers that came, some messengers were present when the level of civilization was very low. And then some, their job was to perhaps introduce clothing and textile and farming and basic sanitary means. And as we invented the wheel and we went through the wooden age to the bronze age to the metal age and so on, as we reached that level, finally the time was there that the last messenger would come. The same thing with the Aimma. The Aimma came, 11 of them, at a time when our civilization was not at the advanced level that we are now. And now the time for the Imam, you can see, Ajjallahu farajahum, especially with the beautiful verse just recited by my dear friend and brother Qamar Abi Sahab, and we saw there, and Noor, and it was a beautiful verse. And oftentimes I note how the verses tie in with the topic very well. And there's a Noor is something that I was going to touch upon today as well. So inshallah, the Noor of Allah, what is that Noor of Allah, in which they're saying that they intend to blow out the Noor of Allah with their mouths. They're going to blow like you blow out a candle. So Allah is telling them that they are thinking as they blow out the candle, they can blow out the Noor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, now what you see is technology is advancing at such a speed now. It is, yes, it is our efforts as a collective humanity, but it is also preparation for the advent of your Imam. Now you are seeing that when your Imam comes, everything will be spread immediately. All messages will be recorded. Everything will be evidenced. There will be no doubt in anyone's mind. Social media and the way everything is expanding. You will see how all this technology that we are seeing booming before our eyes will come into play at the time of the zuhur of your Imam, Ajjallahu faraj. And so we take a look at the part of the sermon in which Amir al-Mu'mineen, as-salatu was-salamu alayhi, is saying, وَخَلَّفَ فِيكُمْ مَا خَلَّفَتِ الْأَنْبِيَاءُ. Khallafa. So khallafa is where there is a bond. Khalafa is where there is an obligation. Khalafa is where something is being left as proof and evidence for you. Fikum, amongst you. As the same which other prophets, all the other anbiya fi umamiha, among their peoples left an evidence. So every prophet left an evidence. Otherwise, their duty would not be complete. We see that after every prophet, the people often turned away. The nation started to rebel. As soon as the guide was gone and the remainder was there, which would have been scripture and words and sayings and sunnah, this started to be distorted. So it was easier to distort things once the Prophet of Allah had been buried and had returned to their Lord. And this is what we see happening. So it's important to note that, because oftentimes a doubt can be raised, and we can start by putting a seed of doubt in somebody's mind simply by saying that, well, you know, we don't have the prophet here now, so we don't have rules, or we don't know about new situations that are arising, for example. But if the prophet is sent for a time period, they must leave whatever is necessary after them as well. The last prophet who is coming till the day of judgment and all before that. His greatness and also accepting that he's the last one becomes essential. If we don't accept he is the last one, then we are saying that he was not sufficient to be delivering a message that would be enough till the day of judgment. If we say that he did not leave a complete religion, then we are accusing him of not leaving enough of a message that would be necessary to the day of judgment. The mistake, or the, shall we say, the deficiency may be in our knowledge and interpreting the verses of the Quran and the sayings of the Holy Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and applying them to modern phenomena. We may not be able to extrapolate, perhaps, but the Quran has complete ilm, knowledge of everything that is to pass. Sometimes, though, it needs the right guide. So the Quran speaks, but the Quran speaks a language that is not understood by all. And those who have the same language as the Quran, the same origin and root as the Quran, they are the ones who can properly interpret it. All confusion that arises from the Quran, where we see that some people are using this to justify their unjust acts of violence, or we see people interpreting it in a very different way, is all because we decided that we are the ones who are capable of interpreting the Quran. However, when we see what Amirul Mu'mineen is saying about the Quran, we realize that we need a guide. There needs to be someone present with this book as well. And so when the holiest messenger, whose message is till the day of judgment, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is leaving something, and he says, Inni tariqun fikum muthaqalain. I'm leaving amongst you two things that are very weighty. Their weight is such it will carry you till the Hawz Kawthar. They will not separate from each other until the Hawz Kawthar. This tells us that there's a guarantee that we should have two things left amongst us until we reach the fountain of Kawthar. Me and you are not at the fountain of Kawthar right now. We are sitting in our homes and various other places on the earth. Therefore, there must be two things left even now. And that tells you the Quran is still present, and the other thing must be present too. So Al-Quran wa itrati, my offspring, my lineage. Al-Quran wa ahlul bayti, my ahlul bayt are present. So we see that it's mandatory upon this verse that they be present. And the Quran being present today in our homes is the proof that the Imam is present. Someone is present from there. Because one is there, the other is there. It is simply a matter of communicating with it. They communicate through each other. As the Imam, when the Imam Ajallahu Farajahum communicates, it is the Quran that he is communicating. When the Quran communicates, it is what the Imam is saying that the Quran is communicating. They interpret each other, they speak for each other. any young ones who are listening, especially my elderly, they know better than me. The young ones who are listening should know that this Quran is the written word of your imam, in a sense, and your imam is the spokesperson of this Quran. If you do not have one in front of you, you do have the other. And when you read it, by realizing this book's connection with your imam will speak to you through the Quran. He will speak to you through the Quran. He will enlighten you in your troubles. He will guide you in your confusions. He will show you the way. But you just need that intention of reading the Quran in that way. That means sometimes we open up the Quran like a chore, like a burden. Oh, I have to read this verse. I have to read that verse. The Quran is a miracle, and every verse lives on its own and together. Open it up on any page, read any one verse and look at it. But when you look at it with depth. Don't just look at one translation, but look at many. Look at many tafsir. Understand what that one verse is saying. Once you start to absorb one verse, that one verse will start to guide you. That one verse will speak to you. You will see that verse applied in the world around you, but it must be done with meaning. So we see both of these things being left to us. And, excuse me. Then we go on to a very important message the holiest Imam is giving us. إِذْ لَمْ يَتْرُكُوهُمْ hamalan. Because prophets, they never yatrukuhum, leave them hamalan, untended. They never leave them unprotected, unguided. That is not the way it is. The Prophet, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was imperfect, you may have thought this. If you realize his perfection, you know that the messenger he is sending is enough. And when the messenger is being called back, them being called back is also because now what they are leaving you is enough. Now you are ready to move on. When Allah places shelters and supports for us, but then he takes them away, sometimes we are lost. Sometimes it may be a loved one, it may be an elder, it may be a support, a shade, a roof over our head, someone whom we really hold on to in this life and its difficulties, yet sometimes they are taken away from us through tragic separation. When that happens, then we should realize that Allah would not do that to us unless we were actually ready. If Allah is taking away his imam and hiding him from us, he would not do that unless there were people in the world who would still follow the imam's teaching despite him not being present amongst us visibly and speaking to us and warning us and stopping us and permitting us. Even though the verbal, the audio visual of our imam Ajallahu Farajahum is not there, we still are being guided. Otherwise, Allah would not do this. So that faith is also important to have, which we have the more we realize his magnificence. بِغَيْرِ طَرِيقٍ وَاضِحٍ. بِغَيْرِ, without. طَرِيقٍ, a way, a means, a path. وَاضِح, something that is very clear. So it is not possible that they would not leave without a very clear path. There is nothing more clear than what the holiest messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam left amongst us. For what he left amongst us was left on Ghadir. And what he left amongst us was man kuntu mawla fahada Ali. This Ali is Imam al-Mubin. Mubin is that which is clear, guiding, pointing. It is one that is the path and also shows you the path. So therefore, it is the beginning, it is the destination, it is the middle, it is the means. This is Imam al-Mubin. This is the one who cannot be any clearer. So when we ask why was Amir al-Mu'mineen praised so much in every breath of the Holy Prophet, to the point where people said that you are biased because of your extreme love for this man whom you call your brother, he said, no, it is the command of Allah. He was clarifying what I'm leaving you. وَالْعَلَمٍ قَائِمٍ. That means he established an alam. That alam is still clear today. So we can see that alam amongst us. That alam is something that you see in your Imam Bargas. That alam is something that we see in our homes. And it is a clear indication that we know what the alam of Allah is, the standard is, the bear is, the flag is. And it is that guiding light which tells you, if there is a flag, it must represent something. It must represent a group, a community, an idea, a mission, a concept. So those of us who have a flag, we have an identity. And that identity has been left very clear to us. So how beautiful is what the holiest Prophet ﷺ has left for us in the form of these A'immah, that even though they were jailed, imprisoned, they were unjustly tortured and martyred throughout their lives, we still have that very clear understanding of them, their names, their identity. There is no doubt in our minds. This is what you call leaving something that is clear. This is someone who comes, this is the teacher that comes into the class, gives everything that is needed to the students for the rest of their lives and the next generations to come and the next generations to come till the day of judgment, and then is gone and then goes back. So that is an incredible burden. It is impossible to understand. Someone like me who teaches for an hour knows that he leaves after an hour, not having explained most of the things, having left confusion in thoughts, having left lots of inquiries. This is the messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is the mercy of Allah upon us, that he leaves such a person. And then we go on to see that it talks about, now here it's talking about Kitaba Rabbikum, and this is the book of Allah. And what does it do? Fikum mubayyinan halalahu wa haramahu. It is mubayyinan, it is making clear for you. This book of Allah makes very clear what is halal and what is haram. And that is what it is all about at the end of the day. Once a young person said, why are all the fun things in the world haram, you know? And I think that happens sometimes when the young ones are like, oh, can I do this? No, that's not allowed. Can I do this? No, that's not allowed. After 3 things that are not allowed, oh no, why are all the fun things haram? And you know, what is fun and what is not fun itself needs to probably be clarified, defined, and understood. And what we mean by enjoyment and pleasure, this needs to be understood. And also, is it that we do this pleasure, you know, is that the purpose in our lives? It's very interesting that, and especially for my young ones, my elders know better than me, but the philosophy now, the attitude that is promoted universally in all social media platforms is live your life, you only live once, enjoy it, and do what makes you happy. And anybody who's not letting you be happy and do what you want to be free is restricting you and is, you know, and somehow, very interestingly, our desires have become our identity. Desires were separate from your identity, but now what we've done is the age of information, and I call it the age of confusion as well, because it's the age of identity confusion. We don't know who we are anymore and what we are. And when our desires become our identity, that is where we are. It's very dangerous. Many of us have grown up learning and trained to suppress our desires. However, now it is becoming part of, if you don't have those desires, and you're not fulfilling them, then you're not living your life and you don't know who you are. And that's actually not who you are. So interestingly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us so many different forms of rizq that we have to give forward, you know, and وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. And so everything we get, whether it is our wealth, it is our health, it is our time, money, property, our children, our various tawfiqat that we have, everything that we have to give forward. We're giving forward. But there's one thing that you have that you just don't give forward. Allah has given you one thing that is yours. It's very strange because everything you have, you are like a river that is allowing water to flow through you to other smaller tributaries. So the original source of all is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And from here through the 14 Masumeen, all of his rizq spreads throughout the universe. But as it spreads, there's connecting dots. And these connecting dots are his creations. And we are in their connections as well. And much of I'm getting every breath I get, every dollar or any money you get, and time that you get, and your health and wealth, everything you are spending forward, it must flow through you. That happens when we are not blocking it, and blocking it is stinginess, where we stop. And we do that because we don't realize that it's constantly flowing. If we saw the grace of Allah constantly flowing, we would want to give more, so that more comes in. It's like a system of pipes. When the water moves forward, then more will come. And the more that flows out of you, automatically the more comes into you. But there is one thing that we don't see that happening with. And he has not asked you to spend it. Rather, he has asked you to sacrifice it. And that is your will, your desire, your chahat, your hubb, you know. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there are only two things. There is my desire, my will, my hope, not hopes, I should say, but what I like, what I am pleased with. And there is you and what you like. And if you sacrifice what you like for what I desire, then I will fulfill your desires. So what was meant to be something that was to be sacrificed, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ, that amongst the people there is he who sells his nafs to Allah, sells his self to Allah, and then buys the marzat, the pleasure of Allah, and then buys the will and desire of Allah. So this is a transaction. So everything you're receiving from Allah is meant to go forward, but there's one thing that you receive from him that's meant to go back to him. You sell it back. And it's the one thing he's given you that you have complete control over. Nothing else do we really have a strong amount or any amount of control over, and that is what we desire. So it should not be made into our identity what we desire. Rather, it is something that we should realize Allah has given me. I have complete control over it. And it is when I sacrifice that, that is the ultimate sacrifice. So there's many things that you have that are you give, you know, but that's not ultimate sacrifice. Money. You give money away, but you know Allah will give you 70 times more, 70,000 times more. You give time, Allah will increase your tawfiqat, you know, your intentions. But this one thing is he wants to see now this, you know, will you sacrifice for me or not? So haram and halal become the basis now of our existence. So what is really, if he had not given us this desire, then what would we have truly had to sacrifice for him? Everything is coming from him in a way that, I mean, even if we sacrifice it, we get more. And he's the one who gave us that tawfiq anyway. He gave us the money, so we gave it forward. So that one thing, so important. And, you know, when it comes to haram and halal, there's many verses in the Quran, you know, but just as an example, right? We see over here as an example in this verse, right towards the second line at the end, you'll see where halallahu al-bay'. Let me go back a little bit. Second line, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَا. And you'll see here that they said, what did they say? Excuse me. maybe my translation here is, but anyway, they said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made bay, which is trade, halal, and he made the money lending with high interest haram, that usury as we call it. And they were saying that trade and usury is the same, although Allah has made one, wa halallahu al-bay, Allah has made this halal, wa harram al-riba, and he has made the other haram. So when Allah makes something halal and haram, what Allah is admonishing here is they said it's the same. Now, maybe on one level, it's the same in the sense that it's business or it's a transaction. You are paying for something and you are getting a benefit from it. Like, for example, loans and high interest, for example. So that might be similar in some ways, but that's why it's so important to refer to the Quran, because otherwise what we are interpreting, that's where the danger is. When I decide that I can interpret, but Allah is saying, but Allah made one halal and Allah made one haram. So I think that this is one example, but it applies universally in many ways. In many ways, what we say, yeah, but it's the same thing. What difference does it make? The attitude of it's the same thing and what difference does it make is where we are now mixing up what is halal and haram after it has been made clear. So when we realize the importance of what is halal is basically that which Allah wants us to enjoy, and haram is where Allah wants us to refrain. And by refraining, we are doing the highest duty we can in terms of we are sacrificing our desire and will for what He prohibited. So my convenience, my desire, my happiness, I'm sacrificing because He said no. That's at the end, that's what it's all about. Everything is about that one little question, that if Allah has not allowed me, why am I still wanting to step forward? Why am I not willing to sacrifice the one thing that He has given me for Him when He has given me so much? And so that little transaction there is what makes us buy His desires. And here we see ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ oh, this is where I had highlighted it. Okay, sorry, that's the same verse. They say trade and usury are the same, but God has allowed one and He has forbidden the other. So the idea of halal and haram and seeking it in the Quran now becomes one of the most important missions of our life, because now we realize that everything I do is really insignificant compared to sacrificing that one thing that He is seeing if I will sacrifice, and that is my actual desire. That is what it needs to be. So therefore, I might sacrifice some time in His worship. I sacrifice some wealth in helping His creation, yes. But then I maybe afterwards go home and I'm indulging in sin after sin after sin because I want to now satisfy myself as well. So that was where the true test was. And that is why Amir al-Mu'mineen has said to us, especially to the youth, very important that, if you want to see your Iman, you will see it when you are alone and no one is there to watch you. Because at that time, we're not alone, rather Allah is watching us. وَفَرَائِضَهُ, and the religious duties, the obligations, وَفَضَائِلَ, and virtues. So the Quran has virtues, the Quran has duties as well. And that is what we need to also look at. I didn't go for a verse with every line. That might have probably not allowed me to get through much. So I'm just focusing on some and just translating some. وَنَاسِخَهُ وَمَنْسُوخَهُ. Nasikh is the repealing, the abrogating. That which is abrogated. Abrogated or repealed is that which is now canceled. وَمَنْسُوخَهُ, and those verses that were canceled. Some verses are canceling others, and some verses were caused to be canceled. So you have the verse that's acting upon another to cancel it. What do we mean by cancel it? What we mean is that there may be some injunctions that were temporary. Because the Quran is till the day of judgment, if anything in there is a command that is temporary for that time and place, then later on it is explained that it was only for that time and place. This is again evidence of the universality and the eternality, how eternal the Quran is, the fact that it is completely explaining what was temporary and what is permanent. So we see simple examples of that as well in the Quran. When we see the verses on, naskh or abrogation of the Quran, we see ma nansakh min ayatin. None of our revelations do we abrogate, o nunsiha, or cause them to be forgotten, nati bi khayri minha o mithliha. Without actually putting something else in its place. So there is always a substitution. And this is where, knowledge of the Quran and taking it from the right door becomes important. Quite simply, many have justified their violent acts upon undeserving or innocent people by, for example, saying that the Quran says that we have to fight in the way of Allah, and all the people of maybe Judaism or Christianity are our enemies, and we have to attack them wherever we see them. Or more accurately, that being said for the mushrikeen, the kafirin, that we should attack them where we see them. But what we see for the mushrikeen and the kafirin is that perhaps that may have been during a time of a battle that was taking place in a certain circumstance. That doesn't mean that this is now what we're always supposed to be doing. Of course, when common sense also is always there. There's this internal guide within us as well. So some verses are abrogated, and that's important to keep in mind before we decide to act upon a verse. We need to make sure whether it has still application or not. Wa rukhasahu, and it's permissible, wa azaimahu, and it's compulsory obligations, that which absolutely needs to be obeyed. So we see the Quran is giving things like this as well. Some things it is saying, well, you're allowed to do this. And for some things we are saying, you must do this. So this difference also we see in many verses of the Quran. And we realize from this, there are things which we call perhaps sunnah, and there are things which we call a wajib. There are things which are not necessary. So that also becomes important. That means there are intricacies in the Quran. Everything is not just stated in black and white. Rather, there are something, well, it is still black and white, but not everything is obligatory. That's important to realize as well. وَخَاصَّهُ, and some things are very particular. So some injunctions for us are very, very particular. وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ, we're told, all right, just, or also, for example, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ar-Rahman is particular. Ar-Rahman is general, Ar-Rahim is particular. So there in that simple verse we see, in those simple two words, we see merciful and beneficent, merciful for all of humanity, and Rahman for all of his creation. But Rahim is now his justice, because his adl will be established when he is giving a certain beneficence to those who believe in him, because that is what he has asked of us. So if he is merciful, it is for all his creation. But when he rewards to those believers, that is his Rahimi, and that is where we see him being particular towards us as well. وَعِبَرَهُ وَأَمْثَالَهُ. Right, and وَعِبَارَهُ وَأَمْثَالَهُ, and its lessons, عِبَرَ, and أَمْثَالَ, its illustrations. So it's lessons, it's illustrations. So here we see that the Quran is giving us examples as well. And there is a lesson in it for him who fears Allah. So we see that, when the Quran speaks of lessons, then it is usually for those who are, using their intellect, for those who are muttaqi, for those who have awareness of Allah, for those who are mu'mineen. So the lessons come, but the lessons come with a condition. The condition is iman, the condition is taqwa. That is when the light will actually enter into the hearts and become a lesson. Otherwise, it becomes something to deny. Illustrations, the examples of those who spend their wealth in the way of Allah is like a grain which grows 7 ears, each of which bears 100 grains. So that's 7 times 100. And so we're looking at 700. You know, that's a multiplication factor for those who spend their wealth. They will get 700 times more. So that's where we see there's great benefit in spending our wealth. In fact, it almost becomes, you know, so beneficial that one would think maybe it's a selfish act because we're gaining so much benefit from it. There's many, you know, mithal and amthal. Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. Surah Nur is one of the most amazing surahs, and this verse is incredible because this verse, it gives a mithal, and Allahu nuru samawati wal ard is a declaration that Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Mathalu nurihi, and mathalu is an example, a parable, a simile, an analogy, something that is comparing two things which are different. When you compare two things which are different, what you do is you explain one through the other, but there is something that is similar in them, which allows you to explain the other entity, yet they have to be different. Otherwise, it would not be an analogy or a comparison. So when we make an analogy by comparing it to something that is, you know, different. It wouldn't make sense to compare it to something that is the same. We would not say, oh, look at this water. It is as clear as water. Or we would not look at a glass and say it is as clear as water, because glass, wait a minute, no, what was I saying? I confused myself. Yeah, we would not look at water and say it is as clear as water because it already is water. But we would compare it to another entity that was different. So mathalu nurihi, this one word itself is something that, you know, the mufassirs of the Quran have talked about. Mathalu, the example, the sample, the parable, nurihi, of his nur. So what we're looking at is his nur, and now there's a parable that's going to be given that is very different from his nur, but there must be something similar. And so the difference is so different that when we look at the difference, we're amazed that this is even going to be used to compare it. You know, before you even look at this verse, you know, think about this for a moment. Your child comes up to you, or anybody you know, and you're explaining something to them. You're explaining the nur of Allah. So someone says, can you explain to me the nur of Allah? What is it like? Perhaps, you know, we would play it safe and we would say, well, the nur of Allah cannot be explained because any explanation would not reach him. And when I use words, they won't reach him. And the light that you see, which is nur, is visible light, and his nur is not visible. So therefore, we can't see it. So although in definition, nur is that which is seen, because light is something which is seen, we are talking about one who is unseen. So he is a light, but he is unseen. And our definition of light is that, it needs to be seen. So in that contradiction, we find that we are seeing something that perhaps shouldn't be used for Allah, but Allah uses it himself for Allah by saying, I am the nur of the samawat and ards. And then, and how would you explain the nur of Allah? I doubt anybody would go through it in this way, that they would say, if you just look at the English even, you'll see it says that the parable of his light is as if there was a niche, and that's, a little shelf, a little area, a compartment, and within it is a lamp. The lamp is enclosed in a glass. The glass is like a brilliant star that is lit by a blessed tree and an olive. And this is neither Eastern or Western. And the oil is almost lighting it, but it is lit without the oil. And it is like, it is lit without fire, and it is light upon light, nurun ala nur. And Allah presents this parable for his creation. I don't think that would ever occur to anybody to explain Allah's nur in this way, the way He Himself has explained it. And it begs question upon question upon question. And so when this nur is looked at, and what is the nur of samawati wal ard, and the amthal. So when Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying that there are many amthal, there are missiles, there are amthal in the Quran, how important it is for us to look at that and see what is the example he is giving, and what is this example that he's comparing it to. And when we see the simple example he gives, explaining that in your homes you have a charag dan, and in that you have a charag, and on that charag is a mishkat, and on that charag is a fanus, and from that fanus is emanating light. It's an example that's found in every home, but still it begs us to understand. And you will see that people who have translated themselves, and they have explained it themselves amongst many mufassir of the Quran, when you look at them, whether you're looking at Maududi or you're looking at Tafsir Ibn Kasir, for example, you will see things like they said that, well, the lamp, the mishkat, is the universe. And in this universe, fiha misbahun. In this is a misbah, which is a lamp. And this misbahun, al-misbahu fi zujajatin. So the mishkat is the universe. The lamp is Allah. And the glass around the lamp is Allah's hijab. And so therefore his nur lights everything, but you don't see his nur. In these examples where we are creating our own analogies, it might hold true on some levels and benefit some people at some level of understanding, but it will never explain Tawheed fully, because Tawheed is only explained through the Ahlul Bayt. That means that when we explain it through that example, then we see. And so that is why, Amirul Mu'mineen salatu wassalamu alayhi was sitting, and he was smiling, and he was inscribing some words into the ground that he was sitting upon. Hazrat Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari comes forward and looks at Mawla, sits next to him and says, Ya Amirul Mu'mineen, why are you smiling and what are you inscribing? And he says, oh Jabir, have you read this verse? And he reads this verse, Amirul Mu'mineen, and Hazrat Jabir says, yes, master, I was just reading it right now. And that's why Amir al-Mu'mineen brought it up, of course, because he knows Hazrat Jabir had just been reading this verse. And Amir al-Mu'mineen says, oh Jabir, I'm smiling at the people who read this verse, but do not understand what it is about and do not interpret it this way. And Hazrat Jabir says, oh master, how should I interpret this verse? And he says, when you read this verse, you should realize that Allahu nuru samawati wal ard, mathalu nurihi ka mishkatin. Mishkat is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Fiha misbahun. Al-misbah is me, Amirul Mu'mineen. Al-misbahu fi zujajatin. And the zujaja, this zujaja is what? This is Hassan and Hussein. Az-zujajatu ka'annaha kawkabud durriyun. This kawkabud durri is Ali ibn al-Hussein. Yu'qadu min shajaratin mubarakatin is Muhammad al-Baqir. Zaytunatin is Ja'far al-Sadiq. La sharqiyatin Musa al-Qadim. Wala gharbiyatin Ali al-Radha. Yakadu zaytuha yudhiyu. And this comes now to Muhammad ibn Ali, وَلَوْ لَمْ تَمْسَسْهُ النَّارِ. And that is Ali ibn Muhammad, Nurun ala Nur, Hassan ibn Ali, يَحْدِ اللَّهُ لِنُورِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. And Allah guides to His Nur, مَنْ يَشَاءُ, whom He desires. That is our Imam, Ajjallahu farajahum. And so, li nurihi, his nur. Our Imam is his nur. Yuriduna an yutfi'u nur Allahi bi afwahihim. They have made the intention of blowing out his nur with their breaths. وَيَعْبَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا أَن يُتِمَّ نُورَهُ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُشْرِكُونَ. And Allah, وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْكَافِرُونَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to complete his nur. The completion of the nur is the 14th nur of the Masumin that is now to come and implement his light upon the earth. This will be completed. And you are seeing yuriduna. So how are they? It is incredible. It is only when we realize how much effort is being put to stifle the coming of our Imam, to hinder his reappearance, to put obstacles before him. We do not realize sometimes how vigilant the enemy is. My young ones, you may get up in the morning and think about what game you have to play and what, what sport you have to do and whatnot. This is not what Iblis is doing. He is very, do not think of Iblis like Yazid. Yazid Mal'un is one who was just fulfilling desire after desire, drunk in a drunken stupor most of the time, always partying, always looking for, the various carnal pleasures of the world. This is not Iblis before his downfall. Iblis before his downfall, you will either see him in sajda to Allah, ruku or qiyam, or you will see him talking and delivering sermons to the angels. This is a very different attitude. So when you're looking at the followers of Iblis, Iblis is not like that. Iblis is, to his credit, in the sense that he is very motivated, determined, and very hardworking and obsessed. So he is obsessed with what? He does not want Allah's nur to be complete. Everything needs to come down to what he wants. Iblis wants everyone to undergo the same downfall that he did. That means that he is not going to come and tempt you through carnal desires. His temptation, that's your nafs. Your nafs tempts you through carnal desires. Yazid, what was Yazid doing that was following his nafs? All his alcoholism and all of his sinning and his adultery and his what not else he was doing, that was his nafs pulling him that way. What did Iblis get him to do? To go against the hujjat of Allah. This is what Iblis wants. So Iblis wants people to go into sajda, and through their sajdas not worship Allah but worship themselves, and then start to establish themselves in the way that they worship themselves. They create their own religion, and now they are going to deny anyone that is a hujjat of Allah. This is Iblis's grand master plan, and he is working very hard for it. And he has two offspring with every son and daughter of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam that is working hard under him as well. So that is our enemy. Do not look upon the clubs and parties and all of these, carnal desire centers of the world. That's not your main enemy. That's something that you have to avoid. It's haram. Your main enemy is the one who wants you to deny the hujjat of Allah. And when you look at all of their planning and everything they're doing, you will see that much of the world and the direction in which international politics is going is revolving around this. Do you think it is a coincidence that now the place where your Imam is to come, there are army bases and there's chaos and turmoil all around it? Do you think this is like just coincidence? This is centuries of planning that is now unfolding. Everything that is happening through deliberation. There is Allah's plan, and then there is their plan, and their plan continues. When we see all the billions and trillions of wealth that is being spent and effort that is being spent for this great event, because what happens is we sometimes don't realize the faith that Iblis has in what is to unfold. He said, I swear, bi'izzatika. As he was leaving, he turned around and said to Allah, I swear by your honor. I swear by your honor, I'm going to deviate these people by your honor. Bi'izzatika, Allahu Akbar. He is swearing by Allah's honor. That means he believes in Allah, but why is he kana min al-mushrikeen? What is Iblis' shirk? What is Iblis' shirk? Did he associate anyone else with Allah? Show me one place where Iblis said that this is also associated with Allah. No, he didn't. And what happened to him? وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. He became a denier of Allah. What did he become? A denier. وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ, the Quran says. Became a denier of Allah. He's not denying Allah. He's walking on saying, فَبِعِزَّتِكَ, I swear by your honor. Where is the denial? In fact, there is an acknowledgement of the honor. The acknowledgement of the honor is the opposite of kufr and denial. But what did he deny? He denied the Khalifa of Allah. And Allah is saying, even if you acknowledge me, but you deny my Khalifa, that's it. That is denying me. It is the same as denying me, because I appointed him. I told you to do sajda to him. I appointed him. And you are denying my order, it is denying me. And so therefore, Iblis walks out in acknowledging him, at the same time denying him. And this is Hazrat Adam. What of Fakhr Adam? What of the one whom even Hazrat Adam accepts as an imam? What if the one who is, the one whom fataba alayh, and when Allah accepted his tawbah, Amir al-Mu'mineen says that, who was the one who gave Adam the words, he's the helper of the Prophet, so denying him. Now, when you look at all of that effort, and we imagine the massive amount of effort in denying our Imam, and Allah laughs at them in a manner of speaking. يُرِيدُونَ أَن يُطْفِئُوا نُورَ اللَّهِ بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ. They want to blow out my Imam, my Hujjah. They think they will darken his light, but with their breaths. It is like it's like you're blowing at the sun. It's like all these people come, and we are from here blowing, and we're thinking we're going to cool down the sun. Let's do some anti-global warming campaign. 7 billion humans all together. We have social media. We can at the same time, one breath, and blow out the sun. If we cannot blow out the sun, how can we blow out the nur of the Imam who was present before the creation of the sun? The nur of our Ahlul Bayt, from whose nur we see everything else being created. So Allah gives his mathal. He's the one who says, do not associate any example with Allah. In the Quran, he clearly says, do not associate any example with me. Yet here he says, وَلَا تَضْرِبُوا لِلَّهِ أَمْثَالًا, and do not give any example with Allah for amthal. Here he himself says, وَيَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْأَمْثَالَ لِلنَّاسِ, and indeed Allah is giving an amthal for the people. Allah himself can give the amthal because he knows best what his example is, not us. And he's given us the example of the Masumeen. So their nur is his nur. It is his nur, because his nur is separate from him, because his nur means it's in his possession. In his possession means he is the owner of the nur. And when he is the owner of the nur, it needs to be separated from the owner. So they are the owned and he is the owner. So their nur is his nur. So when it said Allahu nur as-samawati wal ard, we are not seeing the nur of, we are not seeing that nur, rather we are seeing the nur of Bibi Zahra salamullah alayha. How? The hadith says, when Allah awwalu ma khalaqa Allahu nuri goes on to say Allah created the heavens and the earth from the nur of Bibi Zahra salamullah alayha. So therefore, this tafsir, that is why in another tafsir, in our tafsir, we see that the example that is given, our Imam Jafar Sadiq, as-salatu wassalamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad, says, ka mishkatin fiha misbahun. The mishkat is Bibi Zahra salamullah alayha. Fiha misbahun. The misbah is Hassan. Al-misbahu fi zujajatin. Az-zujaja is Hussein. And so, in the example, again, it is through them that we realize. So this is our guiding light. And that is why, we send our salam upon them and our felicitations upon them. For indeed, we see that the guiding light that came, and the guiding light of Allah, our Imam, Ajjallahu farajahum, and we pray for him. We pray for his reappearance, but sometimes we do not realize the loneliness. I have read many heartbreaking ashar about Amir al-Mu'mineen's tanhai. Hazrat امیر المومنین کی تنہائی کا ہم گفتگو کرتے ہیں، یقیناً بس جب بھی امیر المومنین کی تنہائی کا سوچیں اور گریہ کنا ہو تو ہمارے امام کی تنہائی ضرور یاد رکھیے، کیونکہ ایسی تنہائی اس مدت تک کسی نے نہیں سہی۔ ہم بعض دفعہ یہ سوچتے ہیں کہ ہمارے امام کس حال میں ہوں گے، ہاں کم از کم قید میں تو نہیں ہے، بے شک قید میں نہیں ہے، لیکن جب ہمارے ائمہ قید میں ہوتے تھے تو کوئی نہ کوئی مومن آ کے کسی نہ کسی ذریعے سے مل لیتا تھا۔ ہمارے امام اس تنہائی میں ہے کہ نہ کوئی آ کے ان سے مل سکتا ہے، اور وہ حجت خدا جو خود کہتے ہیں کہ دعا کیا کرو۔ امام جعفر نے کہا کہ جب تم دعا مانگو تو کہو کہاں ہے وہ، کہاں ہے وہ، کہ مولا میں ہر مخلوق کو دیکھتا ہوں، دعائیں ندبہ میں آپ کہتے ہیں، لیکن آپ نظر نہیں آتے ہمیں۔ یہ کس طرح کی کائنات ہے، یہ کون سا جینا ہے، یہ کس طرح کی زندگی ہے کہ مولا ہر شے کو تو ہم دیکھتے ہیں جو کائنات میں ہے، اور آپ جس کی وجہ سے ہر شے ہے آپ کو ہم نہیں دیکھ پاتے۔ دنیا سمجھتی نہیں کس طرح سے ایمان مٹتا جا رہا ہے مولا، کس طرح سے مشکلیں آتی جا رہی ہیں مولا۔ آپ کا ایک ہاتھ تو آپ کی تلوار پہ رہتا ہے، یقیناً کہاں ہے وہ جس نے کربلا کا انتقام لینا ہے، کہاں ہے وہ کہ جو خون بہا گیا ہے کربلا میں اس کا آ کے انتقام لے گا۔ مولا اب ہمارے جوانوں کو، نوجوانوں کو سلایا جا رہا ہے، اب بتایا جا رہا ہے کہ کربلا بس ایک ثانیہ ہے، اب بتایا جا رہا ہے کہ انتقام کی ضرورت نہیں ہے، اب بتایا جا رہا ہے کہ ہمارا ایمان جو ہے اس کو ٹھنڈا کر دیا جائے۔ مولا آپ ہی آ کے انتقام لیں گے، اور یقین جانیے کہ جب تک ہم اس صدا کو یاد نہیں رکھیں گے ہمیں اس امام کی اہمیت سمجھ میں نہیں آئے گی کہ جب وہ بی بی جو در و دیوار کے درمیان تھی اور جس وقت انہوں نے محسوس کیا کہ اب حضرت محسن کو بھی شہید کر دیا گیا ہے، اس وقت ہماری بی بی نے جس امام کا نام لیا تھا، نہ امیر المؤمنین کا نام لیا، نہ حسنین جو وہاں پہ موجود تھے ان کا نام لیا، بلکہ ہمارے امام عجل اللہ فرجہم کا مبارک نام لے کے کہا کہ اے آنے والے جلدی آ اور انتقام لے۔ فَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ أَلَا لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ۔
جی مولانا ایک دعا پڑھا دیں آپ کے مبارک آواز سے، اور جو ہے اس کے بعد ہم کوسچن آنسرز کے سیشن میں چلے جائیں گے۔
جی بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ یقیناً اس آیت کی تفسیر ہم اس آیت شفا ہے، اور اس آیت کے ذریعے سے تمام بلائیں دور ہوتی ہیں، مصیبتیں دور ہوتی ہیں، تمام بیماریاں دور ہوتی ہیں، توفیقات میں اضافہ ہوتا ہے، برکات میں اضافہ ہوتا ہے، رحمت میں اضافہ ہوتا ہے۔ اسی آیت کی 5 دفعہ تلاوت کرتے ہوئے، یہ احساس کرتے ہوئے کہ اس آیت کی تفسیر کے بارے میں امام نے فرمایا کہ یہ اللہ نے ہمارے امام سے کہا، یعنی کہ ہمارے 12ویں سے اللہ خود کہہ رہا ہے اَمَّن يَجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ، کہ اے میری حجت جب تم پکارتے ہو مجھے تو کون ہے جو تمہاری فریاد کو سنے گا سوائے میرے؟ یہ وہ اللہ ہے جو ہمارے امام کی فریاد کو سنتا ہے۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ اَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ، 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 اَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ یا ارحم الراحمین بحق فاطمہ و ابیہا و بعلیہا و بنیہا۔ تمام بیماروں کو شفا یابی عطا فرما، جو بے اولاد ہے ان کو نیک اولاد عطا فرما، جن کی شادیاں نہیں ہوئی ہیں، جن بے روزگار ہیں ان کی مشکلات کو دور فرما، ہمارے والدین کے سایہ کو سروں پہ قائم و دائم فرما، جن کے والدین گزر چکے ہیں ان کے توفیقات میں اضافہ فرما کہ اپنے والدین تک وہ ثواب جاریہ پہنچا سکیں۔ اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد۔
مولانا سوال جو آپ کا हम काफी लोगों से हर जगह बात करते हैं, तो everywhere in the world they have a problem of the youths not attending majalis, not coming to the mosque, and also the level of their religious knowledge is not increasing day by day, but they are into the worldly things. So anything you could shed some light on these few important, how to, when they are at a very young age, how to make them get the feel of Allah, the marifat of Allah. तो थोड़ा सा इसमें जो है बच्चों को यंग एज से कैसा सिखाएं, थोड़ा सा जो है यंग एज से सिखाना बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है. आप तो प्रोफेसर हैं और एजुकेशनलिस्ट हैं, तो थोड़ी सी इसमें वो दी.
माशाल्लाह बहुत अहम मौजू और बहुत अहम सवाल मुस्तफा साहब, मौला आपको सलामत रखे. I'm noticing a hand up as well. Maybe I can just talk a little bit about what Mustafa Saab said, and then there may be a question or a comment as well that is going to come there, but Yunus Bhai will, or Mustafa Saab will moderate that. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And it is definitely something that is a big challenge, absolutely. And it is a challenge that has become more and more difficult in this day and age. And the challenge becoming more difficult in this day and age is something that was foretold. We knew this was to happen. In the last days, Iman will be such that people will leave their house with Iman and return with Kufr. In the last days, Iman will be such that it will be so rare that it will be like for a grain of salt in flour. It will be like the needle in the haystack. It will be like a speck of dust, one little dust of diamond in the Sahara Desert. And that is what we see now. And also, when science became the enemy or the counterpart, and somehow we defined science in a way and defined religion in a way that they became enemies of each other, and they are somehow contradicting each other in this day of confusion, it becomes very difficult for us to instill within our children that the obedience that was taught to previous generations versus the freedom that is promoted in this generation is very different. Whereas we see previously, we said whatever was said, we accepted, and not too many questions, more acceptance. Now there is question before every acceptance, to the point where now nothing is accepted without questioning, without reasoning, without understanding. That is something that is present more so in the new generations we're seeing, and will continue to increase than before. That means that when we are accepting things as human beings, the question is, how much do we question before we accept? It is applied universally in many ways, from accepting the order of vaccination. When will a person accept that there is a virus and there are vaccines that are needed for this? And what questions will they ask, and how many do they need to answer? There will be some people who, when it is said on television, they accept it. There will be some people who will accept it after asking questions and doing research and getting enough answers and statistical data. There will be some people, no matter how much data you show them, they will never accept it. So this is human nature, and we'll always see these basic three varieties. I was shocked to realize and find out that there are still people today, there is a society of them, who believe the earth is flat. They believe it is flat, even though you've seen pictures from outside showing you it's round, with thousands of other, points of evidence for that. So in this day and age, when we are seeing that our children are asking questions before accepting anything, our approach has become that we need to find answers for everything. So on the one hand, we are thinking, well, we should find answers to everything the child is asking, otherwise they will not become Muslims. This means that, did Allah create a system where every question needs to be answered for someone to accept? Did he send prophets that answered every single question that was asked? No. There are questions that were asked, like when is the day of judgment, that was not answered. So were there questions asked of those who knew everything? The last prophet is Madinatul Ilm. He can answer every question. His hujjat, his imams, they can answer every question. So therefore, did they answer every question? No. When is the zuhur? They did not tell us. When is the yawm al-qiyamah? They did not tell us. Many things they did not tell us. Most of the things they did answer. But this tells you that it is not right, or it is not Allah's design. It is not the nature of things that we should only accept what we have an answer to and not accept anything else. Because if we do that, then it is coming with the understanding that I am perfect. Because my intellect is kamil and perfect, only that which I understand is haq. And anything I don't understand is not haq. Therefore, I have become now, my intellect has become the standard for what is haq, what is true, what is evident. But my intellect is different from your intellect, and everyone's level is different. So what I accept, you may not accept. So how can human acceptance of something now lead to universal truth? It's not possible, because then nothing would be true now. Therefore, I would accept something, you don't accept it because you're not accepting it. Is it true then, or is it not true? Therefore, there is the element of faith where we have to accept some things. Otherwise, we cannot believe in Allah, because He is believed in not through physical acceptance of His attribute, of what we see and hear, but rather through the hidden acceptance of it. So if we establish that, and I'll move along quickly, I know it was a time-consuming answer, but now if we establish that we have to instill in our children the faith, then that comes with instilling in them the idea of accepting some things at faith. So some things, and that comes from a young age where we have to do that. But we need to answer most questions and ask them to accept a few things. In the first 7 years of life, when the child is growing, Amirul Mu'mineen says at that time, what should you do? You should treat them like kings and queens. And what does science say? Science says this is the age in which the child is developing a sense of self. They are developing their self-identity. So what we do is we instill in them that self-identity by fulfilling all of their needs. When the child sees that I have two parents who nourish me, sustain me, fulfill all of my needs, in 7 years, they will come to have complete faith in the parents. Once they have established complete faith in these parents, and we present to them a model of perfection, we present to them a model of light and wisdom and guidance and shelter, and we give them all of their basic necessities and even other things that they might ask for, as long as they are not harmful for them and they are okay and so on. Then what happens is they have faith in us. Then what we do is we tell the child that you should know that the love I have for you is from Allah. Whatever I have given you, my desire to help you, protect you, nourish you, is from Him. The gifts that I have given you and the necessities I have provided for you, it is all from Him. And through all of this, as I am providing all of this, you should know that He is the one who commanded me to do it. So it is not me, it is Him. And I am just the medium. Now, as the child gets older, his faith in Allah will increase. And as the child becomes an adult or a teenager, many things that they desire now that they won't get maybe through the parents directly, they know who they can ask. So they start to form. That's why, we form that faith now with the actual Rabb, through the Rabbs that He presented to us that were with us, our parents. So that becomes important. The other thing is that the idea that children have to obey us, that's very important. Amirul Mu'mineen says from age 8 to 14, we have to give the children the station of slavery now. We made them kings and now we make them slaves. Kings and queens, we listen to everything they said, now they have to listen to everything we say. That sense of obedience is very important. So it's not easy to do, because the problem is that, we only accept what we understand. And having the humility to realize that we don't understand everything is very important. And that arrogance and that ego is what needs to be controlled nowadays, and that is the main challenge. So Mustafa Saab, I think we identify, some of the problems, but yes, as the chat says, it's a very long topic, but I think we have to start somewhere there. Jazakallah.
Thank you. I see another hand up. Sister Fatima Hadi, also known as Majabin, if you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum Mustafa Bhai and Maulana. This is Hadi from Chicago. Hello, are you listening?
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, we can.
Walaikum assalam. Assalamu alaikum. Yes. Actually, I have two questions. First question is about the Mustafa Bhai's, follow-up of that question. And thanks, Maulana. You did explain in a great length about the cause and effect of the current situation of youth. But I believe my personal perception is that we barely touched the action plan for all ages. So I think what Mustafa Bhai is more interested in is action plan, which is a practical steps, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For example, for all ages from 0 to 7, 7 to 14, and 14 to 21 and onward. So that action plan, I believe if Maulana can further expand, maybe in next session or maybe in the following sessions or maybe in next 3-4 sessions, that will be good actually. That will benefit most people. This is the first question. Second question is that I request Maulana to, maybe I forgot, because I was listening lecture, the Hazrat Fatima Sallallahu Alaiha, her name itself is Noor. So in the scheme of things which Maulana explained about the 14 Masumins, the explanation of the verse of Quran about Noor, where does Hazrat Fatima fit into that scheme of things? Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum Maulana.
Wa alaikum assalam. Yes, and so there's at least 3 different interpretations in tafsir that I have read about this in Shia tafsir about this the nur that is mentioned over there, and one of them we see in which Amir al-Mu'mineen was talking to Hazrat Jabir, in which he mentioned 13 Masumin. Because there's 13 points mentioned here, 13 parables, part of sections of the parable. So that applied to the 13 Masumin, in which Bibi Salamullah Alayha's name was not mentioned. So in those 13, yes, we see. But the second interpretation also given as well by Imam Jafar al-Sadiq salatu wassalamu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, was that the Mishkat is Bibi Zahra Salamullah Alayha, and then after the niche, and then after that the Misbah is Imam Hassan, and the Zujaja is Imam Hussein, and then Ka'annaha Kawkabud Durriyun, again the Imam mentions Bibi Zahra's name. So the bright shining star is also Bibi Zahra Salamullah Alayha. So on the one hand, it's interesting to see in one tafsir, we see 13 Masumin mentioned, and in the other tafsir, we see just Bibi Zahra and her 2 sons mentioned. So when it comes to, giving her name, it wasn't even given like with the whole Masumin, rather 13 were mentioned, and she's mentioned in a very distinguished and distinct way. So she's mentioned almost separately. And then in a third interpretation, even the Nur is also mentioned as the Nur of Hidayat, which is sitting in the qalb of the mu'min. So that in itself goes into detail in its own interpretation, but in its basics, the third interpretation is also that the Hidayat and the Hub of the Masumin that we have in our qalb is also a Nur, and this is also connected to Allah's Nur.
Shukran. Thank you, Maulana.
Jazakallah.
So I hope inshallah next time when we talk about it, probably we'll concentrate about some action plan. So for example, list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for all ages of youth. So we can address this problem probably in future in a better way. Inshallah. Jazakallah Maulana.
Jazakallah. Certainly, yes. I'll try to come up with something like that maybe also will allow me to continue my topic, but we can at least have something for parents of children of all age groups in a practical sense that they can start implementing right away. And then, inshallah, Allah is the guide and we'll see.
Jazakallah, Haji Bhai, joining
Thank you,
from
Maulana.
Chicago. And the action plan is the key word, Maulana. So we have to come up with some action plan for youths, and also the adults will follow the same concept of believing in Allah, Tawheed, and दिन रात जो है अल्लाह को याद करें हर चीज के लिए. Next question from any participants?
Okay. I think that's pretty much it for today.
Jazakallah.
Jazakallah, Maulana. Thank you.
Here's a question, Hajiyawa.
The session is not complete.
Okay.
It is complete after Abbas Rizvi final touches gives to the session. Bismillah. Walaikum salam. आपकी आवाज भी सुनना चाह रहे सब लोग.
Nurani today, inshallah. Just to say, because the subject of this children, क्या कहना तालीम तरबियत परवरिश, which is a very very huge subject. मगर अगर क्या बात तो इमाम की जो हदीस है, अगर इसकी आप थोड़ी और इस्लाह कर दें या इसकी मज़ीद तफसीर कर दें, इमाम फरमाते हैं छठे इमाम सिफ्थ इमाम के तुम्हारे बच्चे तुम्हारे घर में जो हैं वो यतीमान आले मोहम्मद हैं, तुम उनको अपने बच्चे मत समझो, बल्कि वो हमारे बच्चे हैं, हमारे यतीम में जो तुम्हारे घर में पढ़ रहे हैं. तो we dedicate our life towards इमाम्स cause, क्योंकि बच्चों की जो पहला जो स्कूल है, जो पहला जो दर्सगाह है, वो घर है, उसके माँ बाप है. अगर बच्चे अपने माँ बाप को देखते नहीं है कि वो इस्लाम पे किस सीरियसली प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं, और जब बड़े होते हैं तो आई थिंक इट्स काइंड ऑफ इट्स सॉर्ट ऑफ लेट, because you planted the tree of apple or something else and you're expecting something else. Is that true, Hajiya?
Subhanallah. Jazakallah Mustafa Saab for inciting Abbas Saab to contribute. Alhamdulillah. And what a beautiful hadith, and what a concept. And in its action, it's so simple, and as you so beautifully put, Abbas Saab, I mean, if I imagine a caretaker of let's say, for example, there is a very wealthy boy, he's or girl, and they are inheritors of a great inheritance. And but their parents are not there for some reason. For the first 15, 20 years, the parents are not there. They're being brought up by servants. And there's a butler and maids and servants and whatnot, and caretakers and nurse and so on. And as they're bringing up the child, they know that that this is not their child, but they have a duty. And their duty is that they have to make the child and raise them in such a way that the parents who will not see the child from age 0 to 20, when they come and see the child at the end, they have expectations. They don't want to get in trouble and say, what have you raised? What is this? What is going on here? And so every effort of their day is spent in trying to train this child in characteristics, in strength, in knowledge, in education, in wisdom, in intellect, so that finally at the end, when the real parents come and they are presented to them, we are physical parents of our children, physical bodies, but they're ruhani parents, yes, are the masumeen, and the ruhani father is the imam, and we are basically raising someone for the imam. And when we have that mindset, we manage to let go of ego. Mera bacha hai, my child. It's that my goes out of it. And the moment that my goes out of it, then our focus becomes clear, our target, our goal. And I think we realize that it's such an important mission that we have. And then we realize that it's just not about self and ego and fulfilling our desires. So Jazakallah Basab. What a great hadith. Jazakallah.
Thank you for sharing. Amazing hadith.
Thank you,
جی آخر میں جو ہے یہ ہمارے آج کے اسپانسر بہت ہی قریب دوست اور رشتہ دار حسین جعفری اسپانسر کرے ہیں یہ 5 سیشنز. تو ان کے ہیلتھ کے لیے اور ان کے صحت کے لیے اور ان کے رزق کے لیے اور ان کی فیملی میں جو لوگ جو ہے دعائیں مانگتے ہیں, کوئی بیمار ہیں اور کوئی اس سے گزر رہے ہیں, تو ان کے لیے ہم دعا کو ہیں. مولانا آپ خلوص دل سے جو ہے ان کے فیملی والوں کے لیے دعا کریں. بسم اللہ. صلی اللہ علیہ. آخر میں پورے پارٹیسپینٹس اور ان کے مرحومین اور مولانا آپ کا جو ہے یہ سیشن ہر وقت ہمارے کافی لوگ اس پہ اسکرپٹ میں بھی لکھ رہے ہیں, ہماری بہن, تو یہ چھوٹے چھوٹے بکلیٹس کی شکل میں پورے لیکچرز آپ دیکھیں گے ای بکس میں, اور اس میں آپ کے ہر وقت کے لیے یہ ایک ہسٹوریکل چیزیں بنی ہیں. بسم اللہ. شکر مولانا.
The only thing that I want to share that is going on in my mind at this time is ابھی جو جناب عباس رضوی صاحب مولا کی حدیث پیش کی ہے کہ تمہاری اولاد یتیم آل محمد ہے, تو یہ بس میں اکثر کوشش کرتا ہوں کہ حدیث سے حدیث کو ملاؤں, حدیث سے قرآن یا پھر قرآن سے حدیث کو. دوسری حدیث میرے ذہن میں جو آئی بس اس کو سپورٹ کرتے ہوئے اس کے ساتھ پیر میں چلے گی, وہ یہ ہے کہ رسول خدا فرماتے ہیں کہ میں اور علی اس امت کے باپ ہیں. تو ماشاءاللہ thank you Abbas Rizvi Sahab, amazing hadith that you have shared, and it seems to relate with the other hadith that I just quoted. Thank you.
Subhanallah, subhanallah.
اور یونس عباس صاحب بھی بہت کام کرتے ہیں اس کے لیے. وہ آپ دیکھیں گے پلے لسٹ جو ہے بڑھتے جا رہی ہے, 7 پہ تھی اب 15 پہ آ گئی ہے, تو اب چلے گی انشاءاللہ. تو ان کی فیملی کے لیے سب کے لیے دعا کریں. انشاءاللہ نیکسٹ سنڈے ملیں گے مولانا. شکریہ جب تک آپ کو. اللہ حافظ.
Thank you.